Welcome back. Thanks very much for staying on with us. You're watching WION Climate Tracker with me, Molly Gambhir. A quick look first at the latest that we have coming in. What's lined up for you? The world's glaciers are melting and human activities are to blame. After the Industrial Revolution, carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions raised temperatures, and the poles are currently warming up 2 to 3 times faster than the world average. And as a result, glaciers are rapidly melting. In Europe, climate change has made water a lot more scarce. European nations rely on water extracted from the surface waters like rivers and lakes. But with glaciers melting in the Alps, Europe could soon be facing a major water crisis.
If you look at all of the glaciers in the Alps, then of course, you have to say that the situation is a bit different compared with the German glaciers. We have many more. We have around 3,000 glaciers still in the Alps. And there are a few very large glaciers in the Alps that will survive for a long time. But it is already the case that the majority of the glaciers in the Alps will disappear in the next 50 years.
In Switzerland, at 3,000 meters above sea level, one would expect to see ice. However, above the village of Les Double-Arrêts, there are now huge areas of bare rock. Switzerland's glaciers have lost more than half their volume in less than 100 years. A new study shows that the long hot summer this year has accelerated the melting of glaciers. The glaciers support ski resorts and attract climbers and hikers in the summer season, but are also essential to Europe's water supply. In the famous resort of Zermatt, climbing trails up to the Matterhorn have had to close because as the glaciers melt, the rock once held together by ice becomes unstable. And now communities across the Alps are worrying about their future. 2 glaciers have split apart, revealing ground not seen before.
We can see the problem up here. It's for the whole Europe or for the whole world because of the water. Not only we need the water, the whole Europe needs the water from here.
The Alps Glacier is one of the largest in the Alps, located in Valais in Switzerland. It covers approximately 82 square kilometers. In 1968, an aircraft crashed on the glacier and the wreckage was never found. But in August, it was uncovered after over half a century, and it was all down to climate change. However, the consequences of ice loss are far more dangerous than the damage to local tourism or revealing long-lost wreckage. A study based in Switzerland suggesting that there is a direct link between the ice loss and global warming. Ice caps are extremely vulnerable to changes in temperature, so if the planet warms up, glaciers are the first to notice and respond by melting. At the speed that the glaciers are melting, all of Europe that is dependent on these glaciers for water will suffer. There seems to be no end to the distress caused by the floods in Pakistan. Major parts of the country remain flooded. On Friday, Pakistan's armed forces have rescued a further 2,000 people stranded by the rising flood waters. In total, over 50,000 people have been moved to safer areas. As the death toll crosses 1,200, planes carrying fresh supplies are forming a humanitarian air bridge with families and children especially at risk of disease and homelessness.
We have taken shelter in the school, but there is no food here. We'd be better off dead instead of living at this place. We have small children. This place is very dirty and a lot of mosquitoes are here. There is no sweeper here. We are very unhappy here. It would have been better to drown and die in flood water instead of this.
Pakistan officials and the UN have blamed the unusual monsoon and flooding on climate change. Pakistani authorities have warned the people in the devastated southern Sindh province to move to safer places before more flood water from the swollen Indus River is expected to hit the region this week. In May, some parts of Sindh were the hottest in Pakistan, and now people are facing floods there that have caused an outbreak of waterborne diseases. While floodwaters have continued to recede in most parts of the country, many districts in Sindh remain underwater. Pakistan's meteorological office has predicted more rains and flash flooding for the month of September. The records showing that rainfall this year was unprecedented and deluging areas where people would never have experienced rains on this scale. Experts say that countries like Pakistan that have contributed the least to global warming are often battered by the worst impact. Monsoons are a common occurrence across the world, and while they are nature's boon, with climate change and other man-made impacts, they have proven that they can also be a bane. The induced changes have altered monsoons to an extent that the vast life-giving phenomena has turned destructive now.
Monsoons, seasonal downpours, occur in many parts of the world in countries close to the equator. But the best-known monsoon, due to its intensity and impact on people's livelihoods, occurs each year in South Asia. It runs between May and September. As summer approaches, heat builds over the land in the Indian subcontinent. Sea temperature around the landmass, meanwhile, is much cooler. Warm air is less dense than cold air, so when heat over the subcontinent rises, air rises too, creating a vast area of low pressure. Over India, this causes wind direction to swing dramatically from the northeast to the southwest. Wind from the southwest, generated by high pressure in the Indian Ocean, then rushes in and fills the void left by the low pressure area. As it's full of moisture, it unleashes relentless rain over the land. Climate change, global warming, changes in land use and pollution can all affect the rainy season. Even dust from North Africa and the Arabian Peninsula, which heats up the air, can play a role, making it even more intense. The monsoon is vital to the lives of hundreds of millions of people. India gets 80% of its precipitation from the monsoon. More than half of India's farms lack irrigation, so they depend almost entirely on the annual rains. But monsoon rains can also bring devastation and misery to hundreds of thousands of people through flooding, mudslides and collapsed buildings.
Home to the world's largest river delta and 130 rivers, Bangladesh is a low-lying country. It has a history of disastrous floods. As climate change is further worsening the situation, collapsing river banks and flooding forced hundreds of people to abandon their homes. Our next report getting you the complete story. Take a look. Famed for the Bengal tigers, hundreds of serpentine rivers and the world's longest natural sea beach, Bangladesh is home to lush green natural beauty. But as the effects of climate change loom over the country, erratic weather conditions become a common thing, further leading to the rapid collapse of riverbanks and mass destruction.
জলবায়ুর কারণে আমাদের এই অঞ্চলে প্রাকৃতিক দুর্যোগ জলোচ্ছ্বাস এবং আপনার ঘূর্ণিঝড় আইলা তারপরে আপনার বিভিন্ন নদী ভাঙ্গনের কারণে আমাদের দেশটির উপর বিশাল একটি চাপ সৃষ্টি হয়। তাই এই যদি আমাদের সরকার যদি এখনই পদক্ষেপ না নেয় জলবায়ুর উপরে মানে চিন্তা ভাবনা না করে তাহলে আমাদের দেশটা থাকবে না।
During the monsoon season, which runs from June to October, many rivers change course, devastating village after village. Scientists say millions are at risk of being displaced and becoming climate refugees due to the sea level rise, river erosion, and cyclonic storms. As the rivers swallow villages, over the years, people were forced to abandon their homes and live on raised platforms in makeshift shelters.
ডোয়াটা বরাবর ছিল যে ডোয়াটা একটু ধরে ছিল তো আমরা যখন ছোট ছিলাম নদী অনেক ফারাক ছিল ওই সময় নদী কোনো আছে না আমরা যখন একটু বড় হয়ে আসছি আমরা তখন মনে করেন নদী আস্তে 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 নদী কিনারে আগুইতে আছে আমাগো এলাকাটায় নদী মনে করেন ভাঙা নিয়ে গেছে বর্তমানে আমরা ওই ছোটো থেকে বড় আমরা আমাগো এলাকায় হয়েছি আমরা আমাগো এলাকায় ছোটো থেকে বড় হয়েছি এই বড় হওয়ার ভিতরে মনে করেন আমাগো বাড়িঘর দুয়ার এলাকা যা আছে সব নদী ভাঙা নিয়ে গেছে বর্তমানে আমরা যে জায়গায় আছি দাঁড়ানো এই মনে করেন কিছুক্ষণ দিন পরও ওই এলাকা আমাকে দেখবেন না নদীতে রাখবেন না।
The creeping salt water in the inland is not only stealing away the residents' homes, but also their source of livelihood. With no fish in the river, people struggle to pay rent and buy food.
তিনবার ভাঙছে আবার একবার চারবার এই ঘরবাড়ি হরাইতে আছি আমরা ঘরবাড়ি লিয়া কইছেন থাও মাঙ্গো হে কোনো স্থান নাই নদীতে মাছ নাই নদীতে জাল বাইতে গেছে আমরা কোনো খাবার খাইতে পারি না কোনো কাপড় চোপড় কিনতে পারি না কিছু করতে পারি না ছেলে মানে নদী নালায় যায় কি করা যাইব আমনে সরকারে যদি একটু কিছু লাইন করতো আমাদের তা ভালো হইতো।
Bangladesh is expected to have more than 19 million internal climate refugees by 2050. And given the warming planet and rising sea levels, the situation is going to get from bad to worse. Bureau Report, WION World is One. Climate change is increasing temperatures around the world, warming up our oceans. This has increased the frequency of fish die-offs or mass mortality events. The recent increase in animal mass mortality events coincided with substantial changes in global climate, and these events can have serious consequences for ecosystems, endanger existing fish populations, and reduce the global food supplies. Marine life faces two irreversible challenges posed by climate change: increasing water temperatures and ocean acidification. The ocean is the planet's largest carbon sink. Oceans absorb a third of humanity's carbon dioxide emissions and 90% of the excess heat generated by increased greenhouse gas emissions. As our oceans absorb carbon from the atmosphere, a series of chemical reactions occur that cause the pH level to decrease, making the oceans more acidic. And this then has an impact on oysters, crabs, and corals. Fishermen around the world are already seeing the direct impact of climate change. Fish seeking refuge from either habitat destruction or warming waters, cold water fish species shifting their ranges as the waters warm up, causing disruption for fisheries and established coastal habitats. In a recent research paper co-authored by members of the University of Arkansas, it found that there is a strong relationship between local air and water temperatures and the occurrence of these events. Models used by the researchers based on local water temperature projections predicted a 6-fold increase in the frequency of fish mortality events by 2100. And these forecasts were based on temperature projections from the most severe climate change scenarios. Climate change could wipe out 60% of all fish species. Set between irrigated farmland and rocky desert southwest of Cairo, the Karun Lake used to be pristine once, home to tilapia, bream and shrimp. The lake had much to offer, but now, with population eroding the fish stock, the livelihoods of the Egyptian fishermen are threatened. Known as Egypt's oldest freshwater lake, Lake Karun used to be brimming with life, but in recent years, pollution has ended up destroying its beauty and caused disruption in the marine ecosystem, further destroying the fishing industry that had provided jobs for generations.
Only the agricultural drainage used to be dumped in the lake. Now, agricultural, industrial and sewage drain is dumped into the water. Around 5 or 6 years ago, the nature of the water has changed for the farmed fish and lake fish. There is not even 1% nutrients for the fish in the water now.
With the dip in fish population, the fishermen are left to cater to other jobs. While some of the former fishermen have adapted their small wooden boats to offer day trips for weekend visitors from Cairo, others had migrated to cities in eastern or southern Egypt.
Karun Lake was polluted, so we came here to Wadi Al Rayyan. The financial situation here is not good. It's also depleted. There's no fish seeds and no officials to check up on us. No officials from the Authority of Fish Resources or anywhere else to check up on us. We came here and we try to make a living.
In a 2020 study published in Environmental Science and Pollution Research, an international journal, it showed that the 42-kilometer-long lake has also been contaminated with higher than normal amounts of metals, including copper, zinc and lead. Brutal heat waves are impacting countries around the world. The US, China, Europe. The scorching heat is unprecedented, unexpected, and alarmingly prolonged. As our planet continues to warm up faster, Death Valley recording our planet's hottest ever September day on Thursday. Our next report telling you more. Take a look.
As California endures a record-breaking heat wave, thermometers in Death Valley hit 53 degrees Celsius on Thursday, beating the previous world record of 52.2 degrees Celsius. The intense heat in the valley is the result of a heat dome, which is an unusually intense ridge of high pressure. Forecasts, however, say the worst is not yet over.
The ground heats up. We've measured temperatures of 201 as far as ground temperatures. That ground is then radiating the heat back up into the air. Y'all know that heat rises and normally would rise and travel away with the wind. But here, because of the high mountains, it gets trapped and cools down a little bit, enough that it falls down and gets reheated. So we end up with a recirculating heating effect.
Instead of avoiding the area, however, weather tourists from surrounding states are flocking to Death Valley to see what the fuss is about. As the Golden State struggles with extreme heat and the risks associated with it, the states of Arizona, Nevada, and California are expected to continue to see high temperatures until at least the middle of next week.
Moving on for now, a region in Canada known for its maple syrup production is being tested to mass produce berries that normally grow in the warmer areas. And this could make Ontario and Quebec unexpected beneficiaries of extreme weather conditions. Our next report telling you more.
Two of North America's largest fruit sellers, Driscoll's and Naturip Farms, are both testing the commercial production of berries in Ontario and Quebec. These efforts are being made to check if Canada's most populous provinces can be cost-effective regions for larger-scale production of berries. These farms will grow blackberries, raspberries and strawberries, which usually grow in warmer temperatures. The long-term initiative is being driven by strong demand for local berries. Of course, it is also cheaper to grow and ship within Canada than to sell imported berries.
Then we have northern and eastern Canada, which is now suddenly becoming the hotbed for growing berries. And many of those top berry brands are conducting trials in that part of Canada right now. So what we are going to see there is longer growing seasons, as is the case with the rest of Canada, and slightly better growing conditions for berries.
The berry trials highlight the long-term challenges growers face as climate change reshapes global agriculture, affecting everything from grains to wine. Even olives that are grown in Mediterranean climates are now produced in northern regions like Val d'Aosta. This area is extremely famous for its ski resorts.
Quebec is not a traditional place to grow blackberries and raspberries compared to other regions in the world. But I do feel with the infrastructure that's available now, we can come up with a more steady way to produce on commercial scale good tasting raspberries for a longer season.
Now, as costs in traditional growing hubs rise because of extreme weather brought on by climate change, farms now growing berries believe that make local production will become more viable. And as growers in California spend more to protect their crops, places like Canada becomes more attractive. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Residents of a Canadian town witnessed an unexpected sight. In this rare event, they spotted a water spout, which is essentially a rotating cloud-filled wind storm. It reportedly swirled through a lake, and after that sighting, at least one street was closed as a result of weather-related damage. A sudden hailstorm in northern Spain sent people running for cover. The softball-sized hail killed a baby, injured dozens, and caused significant property damage. Heavy hailstorms took place in Spain's northeastern region of Catalonia, with hailstones measuring up to 4 inches in diameter. They landed on the Spanish village like missiles, smashing various car windows and destroying public property. Raining down in the largest stones seen in 2 decades in Catalonia, the fierce hailstorm became the cause of death of a 20-month baby and injured more than 20 people. Broken bones and bruising were the most common injuries caused by the sudden barrage. Many cars and buildings were also damaged by the hail. Hailstones rarely kill or injure people, making hailstorms that blitzed Catalonia highly unusual. The thunderstorms that produced the hail were triggered by a cold front approaching Western Europe from the Atlantic Ocean. In a 2021 paper in the Nature journal, scientists concluded that in most regions, hailstorm severity is expected to increase with climate change. As weather patterns change, powerful storms are expected to become a common sight. And despite that, experts deeming understanding how thunderstorms are changing across the world is a tricky affair. On that note, it's a wrap on this edition of WION Climate Tracker. We are taking a break at this point. Stay tuned to WION World is One. Thanks very much for watching.